All right. Welcome to Be the Market Expert. And so let's start this thing off, right? You guys all got this email yesterday. It was interesting. We got the email first, and it was like within 30 minutes, your associates will have this email. And so, guys, says Keller Williams is the first to settle the baton and will pay $20 million. All right, so check this out. The only reason why this is important is not that we're, industry first, but I just want to make sure that we're having these conversations around your protections, right? I think that we need to be the industry expert in so many things. And this is one of the things that, has been going on for so many years, right? It says after 5 years of litigation. All right. So check this out. We had these NAR litigations, these NAR settlements that went through, and you guys being a part of one of the largest real estate brokerages in the world, the largest franchise in the world. What this looks like is this: that there's a lot of agents doing a lot of business, and to the public, it means that you guys are all making a lot of money, right? I just saw some other stat the other day, and it was like I think like 46% or something of NAR members sold less than one house last year. And with that being said, and that's nationwide, and so the perception out there is that you guys are rolling in the dough. And so, which is super unfortunate, but a lot of these things, what this looks like is that there have been sellers, there have been buyers that are out there that feel like they've been taken advantage of. And keep in mind that you guys at one point were called junk fees, like real estate agents are junk fees. And going through and you see this like, is AI going to take over? Or, is Zillow going to kick the real estate agent out or insert whatever here? And yet now what this looks like is this. We know with an art commission lawsuit, what we have is two different things that have happened. Firstly, there's no more blanket offers of compensation. All right. You guys get onto the MLS, you guys cannot see what company A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way through the alphabet plus some is offering as far as a co-op fee. All right. So if you were to go on the MLS today to go look at 123 Main Street, 123 Main Street does not say, hey, bring all buyers. And if you bring one that is awesome, that does get to the finish line, we will pay you X. That is gone. That is out of our MLS. The second thing that we need to be very, very cautious on is having the conversation with our clients. Now, every other state except for Colorado has gone through and said, hey, here is essentially a touring agreement. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if you do go through and purchase one of the properties that I helped you go look at, that I turned the key for, you will pay me compensation. Now, in Colorado, we do not have agency that works that way. We start off as a transaction broker, which means essentially we're a tour guide to start off. Like we can go through, we can turn keys, but the moment that we start talking about anything that lives in a fiduciary realm, we have to pump the brakes and get a signed agency agreement in place, which takes us from a transaction broker to an agent. So we do not have that. We are the only state in the United States that does not have this touring agreement. But with that, this is where we have to be cautious. We have to be cautious now because this is the buy side. The Sitzer Burnett one was the sell side. All right. Then they were offered the blanket offer of compensation. Like they're saying that that was the blanket offer. What this one is, this is the buy side of things. So the buyers have also said that, hey, we were actually the ones that got hurt. So we had the sellers say we got hurt. We gave a lot of money out to real estate agents for no reason. And then buyers popped up and said, we paid way too much money for no reason. Like it's crazy. Like somehow, like we're talking about a teeter totter, and supposedly like both of them got hurt. Yet I think it was $70 million is what we paid on the Sitzer Burnett, and then we're paying 20 million on the Batten. Now, what we have to do when we're going through and we're doing this, let's be very, very cautious on how we're having conversations. You're going to have buyers that are going to pop up. They're going to say, what's your compensation? And I think a lot of the times that we want to say, well, hey, historically speaking, the seller has paid compensation, and yet we have to make sure that we're changing our scripts, and we have to look at that contract. And that contract, we can't rest on our laurels. I know we've been very, very good about this over the last couple of years since the lawsuit plus, but yet when we're going through, we have to make sure that we're not telling our buyers, oh, don't worry about it. Seller pays compensation, because it will void your protections. You guys are protected. because of these settlements. But if we break the rules going forward, if we rest on our laurels, if we go through and we take a shortcut, or we don't want to have this uncomfortable conversation, or we think we're being helpful or whatever, you're no longer protected. All right. So we'll see how this thing continues to play out. There's still holdouts like NAR's going through, and NAR's saying, like, hey, no, we still don't think we did any wrong. And they're still fighting this thing. Anywhere, I think, was also named in this. And then there's a Batten 2 that's out there that actually roped in a bunch of other bigger brokerages. So we'll see how this thing shakes out. I just want to make sure that everyone understands we cannot go through and deviate from how we've been having the conversations, because again, while you're protected on the seller side, you're protected on the buyer side from any litigation going forward. It only stands up if we're following the rules. All right. So let's shift this thing. I do want to do a quick snapshot of RE Colorado. All right. I think it's going to lead into the rest of what we're doing. So I'm in RE Colorado. I'm in InfoSparks. So if you go into InfoSparks, it's one of the applets that we have inside of RE Colorado that you get at no added cost just for being an RE Colorado subscriber. So if you were to look at this, everyone can see, right? I can search this by price range. I can go by the type of property, bedroom count, bathroom count, square footage. All right. I am just looking at January data. So I'm looking at last month. Remember, rear view facing data is always going to be the best data that we can look at. We're looking at, if we were to look at like today, what's happening now, it gets a little weird. So firstly, let's look at this. Average days or median days on market. Right now, the median days on market in the entire RE Colorado MLS is 30. So median, let's keep in mind what the median versus average, right? Your median is, I take the one that, didn't have any days on market. It just went under contract immediately because it was maybe a pocket deal, versus the one that lasted 365 days, because we know that's the longest you can have a contract. So that's going to live in there. And we were to work our way down to the middle. We're just getting all the 30 days in the MLS. Well, let's look at average. Average pushes that number up. So the average days on the MLS, if you were to look at this, 54 days, almost 2 months. And again, average, right? We take all the days on the MLS, we divide it by the total listings. So that gives us 54. 54 days is the average. All right, cool. I think that's interesting. Well, let's look at this. What about showings? It's taking on the MLS around 5 showings per property to sell. All right, so we're looking anywhere, if we're on the median, it's 30 days. If we're looking on the average, it's 60s, and it's about 5 showings per, right? And this is pulling from showing time. If you're curious, this is showing time data. And so if we're looking at this, I think these are the conversations that we need to be making sure that we're having with our client. It's going to lead into some other stuff. But when we're looking at this and we're talking about days on the market, we're talking about price cuts, we're talking about the competition, like this is the data that we can actually go through and look at. And hey, if I'm sitting with a client, I'm probably going to drop and look at the price points, the type of home, the bedroom count, the bathroom count, the square footage, so I can actually get this a lot tighter for them. Well, when we look at this, we looked at like closed listings. Okay, so we had 69,000, almost 70,000, nope, 69,000 homes that closed in January 2026. Well, if we look at this, like, okay, like since 2025, over 1 year, we're trending in the right direction. We look at your dollar volume. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. If we look at this, and we keep seeing all these headlines that say people are losing value on their home. Well, check this out, everyone. This is, I think, it's a very good representation of this. Well, if we look at it, yeah, if they were to buy in, 2023, they might have lost value in their home. Absolutely. But there's these pockets in 2024 that maybe they're a little bit higher. So this is your dollar volume of closed sales. This isn't the sales price, but yet if we look at this, this is actually showing like how much volume is going through the properties. Average or active listings. Right now we're sitting at 21,000, almost 22,000 active listings. This is also great info. This is great news. What we are seeing right here is we are seeing more and more homes hit the MLS, which tells me one thing. We have more motivated sellers. Some kind of life event has sparked a seller to raise their hand and says, put my home on the market, guys. And we're in January. We are in January. Well, we're in February now, but this is January data. Guys, it's winter. We know historically real estate agents go to sleep as jack-o'-lanterns. They wake up as Easter bunnies. There's no business really happening per se because we're super seasonal. And yet we got a lot of listings on the market in January. All right. So we go through, we just even look at new listings. Cool. Guys, these are staying pretty flat. Like this is exciting stuff.
May I ask a
Well,
quick question?
hit me with it, Greg.
You said it was taking about on average 5 showings.
Hmm.
Now, is that? I just wanted to break that down. Is that now? Let's say the buyer is it taking the buyer 5 times to see the home to make an offer, or is it just 5 showings in general? With just is it
Great
more?
question. Yeah, no, this is not counting open houses. This is not distinguishing the difference between view one versus view two of the same buyer. This is in totality. They're taking the data all the way across the board
Uh,
and they're looking at showing time just counts. And that's where they're getting this data from.
okay, thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. So let's look at this months of supply 3.8 months of supply. Which, if we were to look at this on the pendulum and we were just to think of like, okay, normal real estate market, this points to balanced. All right. This points towards a balanced market inside of Colorado, right? To where we're saying buyers and sellers are both coming to the table. They're having conversations. They're getting to the finish line. This is what's interesting. I was having a conversation with one of our agents earlier today, and the conversation is really about like stigmatized properties, which I think is very, very interesting. I'm not talking about real estate school stigmatized properties where we're talking about Casper and homicide and suicide and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm talking about is days on market and price cuts and how long it's sitting. I think that that old way of thinking is completely gone. What this would have looked like back in the day is we would have said, oh, we're in a balanced market. And so we got to do price cuts and we're going to be heading to our buyer's market and we got to do even more price cuts. And the buyers are completely in control. And yet, I don't think that's real anymore. What I really think is happening in this time period in the industry that we are in is that we have an affordability problem nationwide. You guys live in Colorado, average price point being $600,000, 6% interest rate, average first time home buyer, 40 years old. They are having to save, because we know this data too, 10%. What we are seeing is that most buyers are bringing 10% down. Well, if we're talking about 10% down on the purchase of a $600,000 home, we're talking $60,000. All right. So they're bringing $60,000 to the table for a $600,000 home. Unless you're in Jefferson County, that's 700,000. So we're talking 70,000. We're talking that these first time homes are around 500,000, so $50,000. What I think is really happening right now is this. We are seeing these first time home buyers, remember they're 40 years old. They have finally been able to save up to 50, 60, $70,000 and then they come online. All right. They reached back out to their lender. They've reached back out to their real estate agent. They've been watching on Zillow. And you know what? This home actually meets their criteria. And it doesn't matter how long the home's been sitting on the market. We've been seeing multiple offer situations on homes that have been sitting on the market for 3 months, homes that have been sitting on the market for 4 months. It is wild when an agent comes in here and they're like, my house has been sitting on the market for 4 months. I have to negotiate a multiple offer situation now. And you're like, what? Like, I get that for a home that's sat on the market for a day and they got five, six offers, and we got to like go through this and battle royale it and, highest and best and all these things. But this is the current environment that we are in, guys. So I don't think there is any such thing as a stigmatized property anymore. This is the right buyer comes online because they finally saved their 10% down and the home meets their check boxes and they're willing to buy. And I think that's very important. I think that's a very important conversation that we need to be able to have with people, right? This isn't a, oh my God, this home's been sitting on the market for more than 4 months. And on average, homes in the MLS are sitting for 3.8. No, this home has been on the market. The right buyer has not come online. That 40-year-old or insert whoever here has finally have enough money and or they finally decided they wanted to move and this house meets the criteria, checks the boxes, and they're going to do it. And I think that's what we need to do and we need to be able to frame the conversations. Now, here's the deal. the caveat to this, right? The asterisk, if we were to go through and look at this, is we've got to know what our sellers' motivations are. Maybe our sellers don't have 4 months, right? So when we're sitting, we're saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what's more important, dollars or time on market? And they're going to say both. And we're going to say, awesome. Totally get that. That's what I want for you. And so then we can figure out what that strategy looks like, right? We're going to go look through all the homes and we're going to see how long the homes is at. We're going to go figure that out in the neighborhood. But yeah, if they tell me it's the amount of money that they get, maybe they don't care if they sit on the market for 5, 6, 7 months. They're just, we're going to sit in until the right buyer comes online and buys. Or you might run into the buyer that says, or the seller that says, hey, I need to be gone in a month. Well, okay, if we need to be gone in a month, we need to strategically place this home in a favorable light. Well, what does that look like? Well, if there's 3 homes in the area and I want to get the top dollar for it, I got to improve my home value, right? Like if you want the top value and there's 3 other homes, then I got to make sure the kitchens are tight, the bathrooms, the paint, right? The floor coverings, all this. And we're saying, whoa, 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 I'm not going to put 50, $60,000 into my house just so that I can make $30,000 more than my neighbor. Cool. Behind door number 2 is let's just make sure that we're priced less than the neighbor so our house looks better. And these are the conversations that we need to be comfortable having with our clients based off of their motivations to get them where they need to get as the real estate economist of choice. All right. So, guys, again, this is Info Sparks. You can play with this. I recommend it. Let's check this out. This is all going to feed into everything we're looking at.
Hey, Charles,
Yes.
can, I'm going to take you a little sideways. That prior screen, do you still have it?
Yeah.
Because I use RE Colorado when I pull data. This is the primary place I go, and I'm just curious. On the bottom right, you'll see shows shows per listing, or yeah, shows to pending. See that on the bottom? What are your thoughts about this data point in general? I mean,
Yeah. So what this is just showing is, so if we were to go to shows per listing, this is going through and this is just saying like, hey, this is how many shows across the board. We know there's homes that are not going to go under contract, right? So this is saying that about 5 of those out of the entire pool of the MLS, right? Out of the entire pool of your active listings, right? Right now we got 22,000 homes in January. Well, it's saying that out of all those homes, we're going to go through and we're going to see about five showings on across the board. We know that's not real, but across the board. Some of them aren't going to get any showings. Some of them are only going to get one because they got NDAs and all kinds of other stuff that's associated with them to where they're not allowing buyers to get into. We also know that there's homes that actually say no showings whatsoever. It's also only pulling data from showing time. I think that's also the important thing. So this is not broker bay metrics. This is literally just showing time metrics. So then you go to show depending. What this is doing is this is saying like actually on median, right, based off of the homes that actually do go under contract, it takes about 10. All right. So for us to actually go under contract on the actual homes, not the entire MLS data, 10 showings. But then when you go to average, it's saying, okay, well, it's actually only 4 more than that, right? So it's saying like, all right, so if we don't just go through and get rid of the random outliers, and again, this is every home that went pending. So then I guess it's just one of those conversations where what I would use this information for is probably my seller. And I would say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what we know about price points 340 to, let's say, let's go this 340, right? So let's just play with this. This is how I do it. So we go 340 to 479. This is obviously a condo. It has 2 bedrooms or fewer, 1 bedroom or fewer. And let's just say that maybe it's a 1,500 square foot. That might be too big. All right. So if we're looking at this, this completely broke everything because this price point doesn't exist. Let's go 48. All right, there we go. Better. So 480,000 to 674 condominium, 2 bedrooms or less, 1 bath or less, 15 to 2,000 square foot. I'm going to say Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Based off of this data, where we are listing at, I think we might be a little too high for the market. And so what we know is that on average, in this price point and in this type of home, if we don't have an offer after 7 showings, then we probably are priced too high. That's where I'm going to use this data.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. Cool. So we got the housing markets post-boom recalibration, recaliber, right, on the shows. And what it looks like is this. It says at the height of the pandemic housing boom, only 38% of US homes in 2021 sold for less than their original price. I think that's interesting. But by 2025, this figure had risen to 62%, roughly on par with 2019 and 64. Guys, that's a lot. All right, I'm just looking at this headline and I'm like, oh man, this is rough. So, firstly, what we're saying is this: 2021, money is free. And you're telling me 38% of homes took a price decrease? Okay, now what that could be is what it listed for, and they didn't want to fix things, and so they just lower the price. That could be it. Absolutely. Then it says by 2025, this thing jumped to 62%. Okay, cool. This is last year. Remember, rear view facing data. And we know that historically, 33% of all homes take a price cut. But then it goes and it says 2019. Well, 2019, we would consider a normal market. That was the last normal market we were in. Global pandemic, interest rates. Interest rates skyrocket very quickly. Interest rates remained high, and prices were not coming down enough for it to matter. So you think 2019, when we weren't in a global pandemic, interest rates weren't 3%, interest rates weren't 6% at a $600,000 price point, and they're saying 64% of all those homes took a price cut. And now we're at 62%. Okay, well, let's look at this thing. So we scroll through, and here's just your list. It says 2018, 62, then to 64, then to 55, 2021, 38%. Remember, money's free. 42%. I would say this in the latter part of 2022 because interest rates went like this. This was the issue in 2022. It wasn't that they were too high, it's how fast they went up is what scared everyone. Then 2023, 54, 2024, or 58, then 25, 62%. Well, let's look at this. This is a pretty cool graph. Let me enlarge it a little bit to where it fits. All right, cool. Home sales prices compared to their original list price according to Redfin. All right, so we'll use Redfin for this. They're an aggregator of information. They're pulling it in, they're looking at it. Here's 2012. This is where you start the 2025 rear view facing data. And if we look at this, guys, your green is how many percentages of homes sold for less than their list price. All right, so this is last year, 62%. All right, cool, we get this. Sold at list price, 16%. Sold above list price, 23%. This is just last year alone. But if we were to look at it versus 2019, remember the last normal market, well, 21% of homes sold for above, 16% sold at, 64% sold less. So what's the real issue here? Well, what the real issue is that we're not having a good enough conversation with our clients. A lot of us aren't. 62% of us aren't around Mr. and Mrs. Seller. What is the motivations for why did you call me here today to get your home sold? What is your expectation? And then going through and actually showing them the data. Because what this is showing me is this. We're not significantly different than 2019 as far as sold below list, sold at list, sold above list. Those numbers are pretty solid. And so as we're going through, we're having the conversations. I don't know if this is news. But if I were to use this for anything, I guess what I would do is I would go through, I would say, hey, last year, we saw that only 23% of homes actually went above list. This is probably where I'm living. 16% of homes sold at list, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. And 62% of all homes sold for less than what they listed for. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, based off of this information, looking at your neighbors and when those homes sold, how quickly they sold, because we can get that data too. Is it more important for you to list your home for the most amount of money, or is it more important for you to sell your home for what it's going to sell for in the quickest amount of time? Because then we just chase the market at that point, everyone, right? Like we go through, then we have decisions to make, right? Because if my seller's saying, well, hey, I'm willing to sell my home for $15,000 less, then let's start it there. Why wouldn't we start it there? Like if we want to get to point B and we are comfortable there and we actually think that's a better price point. I'm not saying like if you think that the home is worth $600,000, list it at 550. Now I think there's some strategy behind that. But yet if we think that it's worth 545 and your client's willing to go to 550, even though they want to be at 600, let's get them down to the 550 point. And best case scenario that we were wrong and the home goes for more. But this is what this is showing us, that we're not that far off. And so when we look at this and we just talk about all these people losing value and all these price cuts that are happening, everyone check this out. Since 2012 until now, we are not that far off track. Actually, in some areas, we're right on the same pace, right? 2018, we're going through, we're looking at this kind of information. This is the kind of conversations I'd be having with my clients. And then we look at here you guys are. This is us. This is really, really us. This is your square. You guys are this square. And this is where we're selling most of our houses, right? So we're seeing about 80%, right? So 62% of homes sold below their original list price in 2025. For us, it was closer to 80% sold for less in Colorado, specifically our selling area in Colorado. But then we switch over and it says home buying power improves as prices cool and inventory expands. All right, so I'm looking at this and we're going through and we're having this conversation, and this came out yesterday. And really what we're doing is we're saying like, hey, here's your home power trends. It says national median list price 419.9. Let's call it 420 between friends. This isn't our market. All right. Price per square foot 208. Let's call it 209. Total inventory 698,000 homes, 2.1 months of inventory. We look at this, we're not too far off, at least on the months of inventory. Everything else is a little bit different, right? But as we're going through, these are the conversations that we're looking at. Nationally, the median list price slipped from 419 while the inventory went up. Yeah, prices are going down a little bit in certain areas in Colorado, and inventory is going up. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we are seeing more inventory, and the sellers that have their home on the market in this time of year are more motivated than they would be in the summer. There will be less buyer activity happening right now. I think that we could actually have more negotiating power with these motivated sellers if we were to move now. Guys, this is good information. If I'm a buyer's agent and we're seeing prices come down a little bit, we're seeing inventory go up, the only way to compete with the other people in my neighborhood is to sell my home for less or to have a better home. That's my only two options. So we're having these conversations and we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, cool. We're seeing price decreases. We know concessions are a thing. We're seeing more inventory pop up on the board. If they're popping up on the board right now, that means that they're more motivated than they're going to be down the road potentially. Let's have some conversations. Like this is the information that I'm taking to my buyers to have some conversations to get them moving forward. But then we look at it says housing demand is still positive. Okay, so we just looked at all these headlines, right? We showed you Colorado. Then we went through and we looked at the list price versus the sell price. Then we go through, and even so more, we just looked at just your home buyer trends. More so, if we dive into it even a little bit more, it says housing demand is still positive, even with this epic snowstorm. Everyone, the market is getting better. That's all we can tell from this, right? We're going through, and people are tired of sitting on the sidelines. All signs point to this is going to be a far better year in 2026, right? It says mortgage mortgage rates remain near 6%. Okay, so this hasn't changed. This is still where we've been. We've kind of ebbed and flowed around the teeter mark around 6%. And it says applications are up 18% year over year. Okay. Historically speaking, and we know that in 2025, purchase mortgage application data went up. And they're saying it went up again this year. This is when buyers are typically hibernating. And when they're typically hibernating, what's happening is that we're going through and now we're actually seeing buyer purchase application going up. They're reaching out to their lenders. 18% more than last year. And we know that last year was better than the year before. People are tired of sitting on the sidelines. So let's look at this. It says, hey, with the epic snowstorm hitting large areas of the US recently, he expected the housing data to take a hit after the solid start that we had seen in 2026, but it remained mostly positive, which surprised him. And so it says the big key to that, of course, is that mortgage rates, even with all the crazy headlines recently, are still at 6%, didn't slow the volatility. People are comfortable at 6%, everyone. We just know it's taking them longer to be able to afford the down payment. So if we look at this, here you guys are. Here's 2025. And what's interesting about this is where you see it here. Again, this was better than 2024. And what we're looking at on this is we're just looking at it in comparison to the year before. We don't care if it goes down. We don't want it to go down below this red line, but anything that is above this red line says it is better than last year. These are people that are reaching out, that are actually talking to lenders to figure out what they qualify for. And yes, some of this is purchase refinances, all right? But a lot of this is just people talking to lenders to figure out, hey, this year's my year. What does it take for me to go buy a house? I'm 40. I got $60,000 in the bank. What can I do, right? Like that's what we're looking at. So your pending sales, all right? So we're going through, here's your pending sales. You guys are the orange. And we're looking through this and it's better. It's winter and it's better than what it was in 24 and 2025. We're not going to look at the 10-year yield or the mortgage spreads or any of that, but let's look at inventory. Here we are again, nationwide, we are seeing more inventory on the board. These are people that when they're coming through and they're putting this inventory on the board, they're saying, hey, listen, something in my life is happening where I need to sell this house. Life event. All right. These are motivated people. Now, I'm not saying you're going to go in and you're going to go get 10%, 20% off of the deal for your buyers. But yet these guys are the ones that are looking to negotiate a little bit more because something is happening to where they're saying, hey, I'm in a snowstorm, not here in Colorado, but I am in a snowstorm right now. And it makes more sense for me to actually leave my house and try to go somewhere in 0-degree weather and sell this house than it does for me to wait until the springtime. We're going through national single family new listings. Again, it did dip a little bit. So we did see less houses hit the market, but yet it's still staying elevated as far as total. Here's this price percentage with recent properties with price reductions. So we look at here, we actually fell off a little bit versus 2023, which doesn't necessarily excite me. And again, 2022, this is what I'm telling you guys. If you guys were to look at this line, this actually line would represent the interest rate increase. So this is what we were looking at. Money was still pretty much free right around here. And then interest rates started going up really, really quickly. And that's when we saw people price cut, price cut, price cut, price cut, price cut, like they were going big. So 2022 is an outlier. We can't really base a lot of information off of 2022, but we can look at 23, 24, and 25 and just look, we're right in the mix. We're seeing the exact same thing. There's no real outlier here. We're right in the middle of these years. And so we're comfortable with that. This is nothing that is going to be shaking heads. And here's your jobless claims, right? So we're seeing this. And again, guys, this is grain of salt data. Any administration is going to move the numbers the way that they need to have the numbers moved. I can't say this is ever real data. I don't care if you're red or you're blue or you're purple, even though I don't think that exists anymore. But this data is, I think, fictitious at best when we look at this, because at the end of the day, this is really coming from whatever the agenda is that someone's trying to push, whether it's jobless up, jobless down. They can manipulate the data to say, hey, this is what we need. and they can decide where they're going to pull the data points from. What we definitely don't want to see is if this number starts getting over here, this is where this stuff starts getting really scary. Now, with that being said, I do want to make sure everyone knows we are Americans. Everyone on this call, you're an American. And we do not wish for people to lose their jobs because that is un-American. And with that being said, I want everyone to realize that on this call, like a recession is not a bad thing for any one of you. In all reality, if we go into a recession, which means people start losing their jobs and this number just keeps ticking up and ticking up and ticking up and ticking up, what that does mean is that the only way for us to be able to employ more people is to make money cheaper for the employers. All right, so they drop rates. Well, what does that do for us? Well, we deal with the highest ticket price point that most Americans are making in their lifetime. So interest rates come down and people are like the affluent, the people that still have their job, they're like, I'm going to go buy a house. And so what this does is when they start lowering rates to incentivize employers to hire more people and to build more widgets and to expand, consequently, the benefit for us at the same time is that interest rates are coming down and then people can afford to go buy houses. While we're not rooting for that, I just want to make sure you guys know that when you're hearing these headlines and people are talking about recessions and job loss, the only way to fix that is to drop interest rates. Now, what happens if they drop interest rates? Things get more expensive. All right, this is this teeter-totter. This is this dual mandate that the Fed's in charge of. Make sure people are employed. Make sure prices stay low. Well, they only have one metric that they can move, and so this thing just kind of goes like this. They want this, and we all know it's impossible. We think this is a dual mandate that is impossible to fulfill. And so then they have to pick what's the lesser of the evils. Or how many people are we comfortable with that don't have jobs in America versus how much do we want to be able to control inflation? That's what they're looking at. But let's shift gears. What I like the most about this right here is just from Coffee Talk, for those that were on Coffee Talk. And Mitch popped on. I wish he was on this call because I would give him grief right now. Mitch pops up on the call and says that the new Fed president announcement popped up and the market acted disfavorably. Firstly, what we understand is the market's going to act disfavorably pretty much to anything that happens. And yet, here's interest rates as of yesterday. They went down for FHA. They went up a little bit for conforming loans. But guys, check this out. Like, this is 3 months worth of data. Let's look at 1 month worth of data. So we're talking like, okay, over the course of 1 month, we're January to February-ish at this point, we're in a better position than what we were when we started the month. This is good. These little bumps, we don't like to see these bumps. And the reason why we don't like to see these bumps is because it does scare buyers and sellers. And yet, this is still relatively flat. If we were to look again, right, we look at it over the last 3 months, it changes a little bit. But if we were to look at the 1 month, also the other thing that I think is important as we kind of look at this is your jumbo loans. And so we've been seeing a little bit in the market, a little bit around these people getting these bigger houses. We live in Colorado, we see higher price point homes. Well, if you look at this, their percentage is actually coming down too. So these people that are going in and buying these $1 million plus homes, money's actually getting more affordable for them as well. So we should start to see more and more of that start ticking up. Guys, this is all good news. We're seeing home prices come down a little bit. Unless you bought in the last handful of years, you're not losing money despite what the headlines say. We're seeing more inventory hit the market, which means that your buyers have more opportunity to go through and negotiate versus the other house. We're seeing interest rates stay flat plus go down a little bit. Guys, this is the perfect storm of everything to have a great 2026. Now it's up to us to make sure that we are the real estate economist of choice, to have as many conversations as we possibly can so that people understand, don't trust the headlines. I'll break down whatever you want me to break down, but let's have a conversation to get you to where you need to go in 2026. And I'm the conduit for that. All right. That's all we need to be doing. Taking this information, knowing that none of this information is bad. Yes, the headline looks scary, but let me break it down for you a little bit more so that you understand how this impacts you as a buyer, seller, and or investor in Colorado.